get up. And on the way up, we're going to bite a kneecap off, all right? And we're going to stand up, and then it's going to take 2 more shots to knock us down, all right? And on the way up, we're going to take your other kneecap, and we're going to get up, and then it's going to take 3 shots to get us down.
What's up, Lions fans? We are back again for another edition of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Vince Progar, that's me. Happy to be joined, as always, by my longtime partner in crime, Phil Byrne. And Phil, we've made it to the end of the racetrack, my friend. Training camp 2026 is finally upon us.
We're finally here. It's kind of this time in July when you're like, I don't know, we really have the Tigers. What else we have going on here? But yeah, sure enough, if you're into soccer, the World Cup has ended.
Mm-hmm.
I think we technically have the WNBA still going on.
What's that?
We don't have much going on at the moment. So it is a very, very good time to get the National Football League and its training camps fired up for us all.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And that's going to be kicking off this week. I've always kind of found it interesting how there's no hard and fast opening date for everybody. I mean, everybody goes by a different calendar as far as when to report for training camp or when practices get underway. It's not like the NFL teams follow the same set of calendar guidelines.
No.
And it seems to me also like I've heard 2 or 3 different variations of what the Lions calendar looks like. I thought, for example, the first practice was supposed to be Sunday. Turns out first practice isn't until Wednesday. I saw something else that says first practice isn't until Friday. So who knows exactly what's going on, but bottom line, Phil, is there will be the whole entire roster, the roster full of training camp invitees, that is, reporting to Allen Park this week, and there will be a practice of some persuasion this week. So that's exciting. We'll finally be able to see our Lions in first organized action since the final game of the regular season. And we finally got a little bit of news that we can get into, and that is the Lions came out with their PUP list candidates over the weekend. And not a lot of surprises there, Phil. We got Kirby Joseph. We got Brian Branch, your 2 starting safeties that were both in a bad way from an injury standpoint. They'll both start the season on the PUP list. And then backup / third string, depending on how you view the depth chart, Tyler Conklin at the tight end position is going to be starting off on the PUP list as well.
Yeah, and to me, I think we knew where Branch was headed. I think Kirby has been the big question mark, the big mystery point as to what his status is going to be.
Well, it's partially because we haven't fully gotten an honest diagnosis yet, have we?
No,
Still don't fully know what's wrong.
And I hate to say it, but we're kind of at this point now where Terrion Arnold and everything that happened with that scenario, I almost kind of have to take until we actually hear something. That's when we'll finally know something. And not saying that there's a redirect of information or we're not getting the full facts or transparency or anything, but everything that happened with Terrion, what the Lions knew and didn't do enough, or if they didn't know and it was between them, I don't know if we'll ever really get the true side of the story. For me, though, at least just having Brian Branch hurt, Kirby aside, this was kind of the biggest thing, in my opinion, as the biggest question mark heading the offseason. The secondary as a whole was pretty awful last year, but at least at the end of the day, you felt good, at least with those 2 safeties back there, that the corners, hey, who knows what you're getting week in and week out. But the safeties, at least for the last couple of years, have been incredibly consistent. And I think, the season kind of took a turn, when Branch got hurt, when Kirby got hurt, and it kind of accumulated in that way. So not to just kind of give us, verbal soup on all of this, but it's not great. it's not the end of the world. It's still early days with what this pup means. I also believe it doesn't mean, if I have my rules correctly, that this automatically means they're going to just miss 4 straight games of the regular season. It's kind of a
If
little bit
they
more
are
of a
not
wait and see
activated
approach.
before the time training camp breaks at the end of August, if they still haven't been
Yeah,
activated by that point,
yeah,
then because then training camp breaks, you have your final roster cut downs, and then at that point, had they not been activated, then they have to miss the mandatory first 4 games of the
yep.
season, meaning you can't come back any earlier than just spitballing at the calendar Columbus Day.
Hmm.
But
Yep.
then at that point, they're free to come back anytime they want to. So I think everybody was kind of in some level of consensus that we weren't really going to see Brian Branch any earlier than Halloween. Realistically, sometime in that little window between Thanksgiving and Christmas was probably more of a accurate idea of when we'd see him. And of course, that's to say nothing about being able to see the actual Brian Branch that we all know and remember out there on the field. I mean, we'll be seeing a dude out there in a number 32 jersey, and who knows what we're getting out of him at that point. Because, as we know, those Achilles injuries are nothing to screw around with, and sometimes it just takes guys, even if they're physical specimens like Brian Branch, it could take them a little bit longer to get back to where they're not so tentative out there on that field.
Well, and it wasn't an Achilles. I mean, but think about Hutch and everything he was coming back from last year, and um,
He broke about 2/3 of the bones in his legs, right?
it's a completely different story. But when he was eventually playing, I think it still took him a solid chunk of that season to really get his sea legs under him.
Mm-hmm.
With Branch, I think it's going to be the same thing. Yeah, we're going to get him at some point. It sounds like, so long as there's not a setback. But um, it's really him feeling comfortable and up to 100% back to where he was are two completely different narratives.
And with Kirby Joseph, it seems like over the course of this current regime that's in place, the organization has been extremely forthcoming, honest, telling you what's going on, being overly open about certain things. We really haven't heard anything good, bad, indifferent about Kirby's situation in a nutshell. We don't know if there's concern within those 4 walls. We don't know if there's optimism within those 4 walls. We don't know anything. And that's extremely rare given how, again, open they are about just about everything. Why do you think that is? Why do you think this is the one situation where it's almost like they're kind of keeping it close to the vest deliberately here?
Well, it's a couple things at play. I think doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that they probably gave him money before they really should have.
Oh,
I think I
100,000%
think
yes.
that's the first business decision. You know, um, that when you're looking at this, it doesn't really align. It's a safety at the end of the day. Um, I think there were other players that were more deserving, certainly. And just I think that bears a little bit of weight on everything with this. That they committed so much to him. If he truly is at a point where he's going to be a fraction of the player if healthy, that's something that they're going to have to take into consideration. I also think too, it could just be a case of when he is cleared. I'm putting a little bit of an asterisk there because I'm assuming he'll get cleared. We don't know.
You hope.
Um,
I've heard everything from he'll be right back in a few weeks to medical retirement and everything in between. So be ready for
it's
anything.
what kind of player is he? How limited are his movements? Is he the slowest safety in the league now because he doesn't have the speed that he once had back there? Um, there's so many questions and variables that are going to come into play here. I don't know. Like we can speculate all we want till we're blue in the face, but I really don't think we're gonna have a better idea if this is the initial pup list until we get to the end of training camp. And maybe we've had some time to kind of play this out a little bit more and kind of paint the picture of how the roster is going to be constructed. Are they going to go add another vet out there to help out the secondary and the safety room? Um, because who do we have? We've got Thomas Harper and
Isn't Avante Maddox going to maybe
Avant.
moonlight
Yeah,
between safety
I,
and
I think
corner or something like that? Or
I think those two might be the starting. Like if we were looking at a depth chart right now, who the two starters would be. So again, I mean, it's not guys that like should be counted on as the starters throughout the part of the season. I think they're okay for a game or two, but
I mean, let's face it, though, the
um,
Lions have bigger issues in that secondary as a whole to where I don't think not having one guy in there is really going to alter the
yeah.
course of what the secondary is going to look like once they go up against top to mid tier quarterbacks in this league.
And so help me God, we're getting Geno Smith at Ford Field week 2.
You sure about
Last thing I
that?
need. He's with the Jets, not
Yeah,
the
but
Seahawks
he's
anymore.
also had a few run-ins with the loss since
Uh,
OTAs took place. So who knows? Maybe AG's turned over a new leaf and has taken a zero tolerance policy with that type of crap. I don't know.
New leaf, huh?
No.
Interesting.
Mm.
But hey, you know what? I don't know. As a Lions fan, I'm just tired of seeing Geno Smith shred my team's secondary. So
100%.
that's what I was trying to allude
Yeah.
to. But
Yeah.
who knows? Maybe that won't even happen.
Hey, as long as Chris Myers isn't on the call, I'm okay with that. Anyway, so that's a look at
What's Ron Pitts up to?
I think he's still buried in mothballs somewhere from about 20 years ago. Let me check up on that and get back with you. So that's the pup report, and we'll know more as far as other players as I'm sure they start to go through drills and whatnot. I think objective number one, Phil, over the course of training camp getting started is just keep everybody healthy. That's the big thing is you don't want any injuries to key guys. You know what's going to happen to somebody in this league. Somebody in this league, I'd say, 1 to 3 guys every single year that are counted on to make a huge impact on their team winds up going down in the first week of training camp. It happens every single year. It's just that freaky nature of what the NFL is. There's no two ways about that. But rule number one is just don't get anybody hurt and go from there. Number two, we finally have our preseason schedule that was set. And I know it's been set for a while, but you and I haven't really had a chance to get to it because that came out after a little ways after the NFL schedule was created. So just a quick rundown of what the preseason schedule is that we're going to be working towards in conjunction with training camp here is going to be preseason week number 1. They are playing at the Cincinnati Bengals. Preseason game number 2, home against the Washington Commanders, and preseason game number 3 on the road against the split squad Indianapolis Colts, because I'm sure nobody will be playing for either side in preseason game number 3. So what I'm getting at, Phil, is as we start to look ahead to these preseason practices and drill settings and whatnot, what's going to be the philosophy of this Lions team? And I think we started to see a little bit of peeling away of the armor last year after such a slow start that the Lions higher ups maybe hinted that maybe they haven't been playing it the right way these past few years by playing so few heavy hitters in the preseason, getting them so few reps early on to where you're almost getting that rust factor early on in the year. Do you think this is the year that we start to see more starters getting more action in some of these preseason games?
Short answer is no. I don't think they're going to change it up. I think it is literally a Dan Campbell coaching philosophy that he's going to go hard in practice, and the preseason games are meant as a litmus test for the guys that are unproven to see how they do under the lights, to get more opportunities, to figure out the bottom 10 players on the roster. Now, are they going to maybe slightly tweak that from years past as far as, you know, we're going to have starters actually play a series? Maybe Jared Goff will actually get in for a series. That's kind of more the stuff that I think could slightly change. But I think they're going to be very, very set in their ways, especially with a coaching staff that has a little bit more continuity this year. I don't think they're going to change that up really much at all. I think you're going to get, um, a guy like Isaiah Pacheco, maybe a little bit more run in the preseason. Isaac Tesla, a little bit more run in the preseason. Some of these guys that are going to be used not necessarily as a starter, but they're going to have packages for on offense and defense that should still see plenty of playing time. Probably expect to see a lot of like Malcolm Rodriguez out on defense throughout the preseason. So I think those are the guys that we're going to see maybe a little bit more this preseason than we did last year. But yeah, if you're going to that Lions Commanders game and expecting to even see Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, Penei Sewell out on the field, it ain't
Much less
happening, brother.
Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, you know.
Now, what about position battles? I mean, I think you at some point need to utilize these live game action reps to sort of gauge what some of these battles are looking like. And if my memory serves me right, Phil, I think the Lions are stepping away from doing those quote unquote joint practices this year. So the only avenue for really being able to grade these guys is what happens in a preseason game and what happens in these fully team controlled practices where you're just going up against your own guys. So you got to think, I'm just using one position group as an example, and you can kind of take it from there anyway. Think like Larry Borum and the kid they just drafted, Blake Miller, for the right tackle position. You really need to get one and or both of these guys out there for an extended look this preseason to see what you have in order to make an informed decision. I feel like you're going to be having to do that in a few different parts of your 11-0 and 11D.
Yeah, and I think the challenging thing for them is when you do have a position battle, what is that time allocation going to look like? Are Borum and Miller playing just the first quarter and it's literally a series versus a series? Is it a quarter and a half where maybe whoever didn't start the game is getting a second series, or is it potentially a whole half? And I think some of that is going to vary on where the depth is for that position. Unfortunately for this Lions team, I think cornerback and that right tackle spot, or really on the offensive line in whole, are two areas where they're not going to have all that depth. I think there are some position battles that need to get played out, and I don't know where they're going to come. So I think it's going to be the stuff that we don't see in practice, or who gets the lion's share. Oh, I hate the pun. I did not mean to do that.
I got him.
Man. For the practices that the media doesn't even see. They have the open practices. Usually how it is, the reporting media will be able to see about 10% of practice. They'll go back inside the media room. The team will finish up practice. They'll come out and get their quotes and everything. I think a lot of it's just going to be what we don't see, unfortunately, and how that's played out. And, I think that right tackle spot, and I think cornerback is also going to be, really, really important. A guy like Ennis Rakestraw, I mean, I don't care who the quarterback is in preseason. We haven't seen this guy play yet.
Right.
Like really at all. And hey,
that's an issue.
If the Colts are like, we just need to play Anthony Richardson just to see if we can even get a 7th round pick for him at this point, in that preseason game against the Colts. I think he's still in the Colts. I don't know.
As far as I know.
I mean, that's still a guy that, like, if Rakestraw looked good against Anthony Richardson, I would still at least take it as a plus at this point. So,
And of course, the one position battle that nobody's talking about, the last chance saloon for Giovanni Manu.
oh boy,
I
Vince.
mean, you got to give him at this point. You got to give him 3/4 of all 3 games at this point, because let's be honest, if you're not liking what you're seeing over, let's call it 9 of 12 quarters in the preseason, he's got to be a top tier cut candidate at this point. No,
Yeah, because at some point the physical attributes don't even matter. If you can't play, you can't play. Like, if you wanted to go find the biggest guy in the room, there's a reason why the Big Show, the WWE wrestler who was like 7'4" and 400 pounds, you're not bringing that guy in off the street
Andre the
to go.
Giant's not walking through that door.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like who cares if they can't move, if they can't play football, if they can't, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it just doesn't matter. You're not gonna go sign some wash up NBA center to go be a left tackle. Um, at some point they're gonna have to cut their losses if it is not working out. And unfortunately, that um is it the 24 draft with these guys?
yeah, I
Is that
think
the
so.
name?
Yeah,
I'm losing my ears here. Um,
or would have even been 23. I mean,
yeah. So the point is, because this was all part of the Terry Arnold draft too, when we were running through it a couple weeks back. That is starting to really, really reek like a Matt Millen draft of yesteryear. Not even Bob Quinn.
well, at least some of the Millen guys at least had some level of talent in college. They just turned out to not be able to translate that into the pro level. On some of these picks that Brad's had, it's almost been like, who, what, where?
This is like a Brian Calhoun.
Running back, UConn.
Wisconsin.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Who am I thinking of the running back out of UConn? I don't know. Whatever. I'm
I don't
old.
know. We drafted Arto's Pinner, out of Kentucky
Yeah, we
too.
sure did.
Like, I mean, like those are just running backs that
Just like Josh Pascal, another bust that Brad
this
drafted.
this is like Lions trivia, you could just go on and on and on and talk about the Boss Baileys of the world, and well, actually he played a little bit.
Blue
I
Adams.
shouldn't.
Whatever.
Hey, you know what? Maybe we run out of things to talk about during training camp, Vince. We'll just record an episode where it's just like guess who. You just
Yeah.
throw out a random Lions name and
Yeah.
try to find a more obscure player.
20 questions of obscure Lions players drafted in the last 30 years, and just see how many we can nail.
Ultimate Lions drinking game.
Why do we think of this at the end of the off season? That this would have been perfect for like a middle of June episode where there's nothing going on. But bottom line, Phil, is like that's a perfect example of a guy where we've seen this the hard way the past handful of years, where when rubber meets road, we need as much depth, good depth, as we can possibly get. Every roster spot is supposed to mean something in this league, and to just have the carefree attitude to just walk around and just light a roster spot on fire with a guy like Giovanni Manu, who, again, given 9 out of 12 quarters in the preseason, if the guy can't play football, you're doing yourself a disservice by holding on to a roster spot that you could be bringing in good depth to help this team with, instead of holding on to it just so Brad can maybe keep looking at himself in the mirror and one day convince himself that, hey, I was right about this kid.
Well, it's really interesting in his case too, because obviously he's got a very, up to this point, everything clean off the field. But like this Lions organization goes for really two things. It's either like extreme production, you know, or it goes to hardest worker on his team. And he's coming from University of British Columbia, all right, but he just has basically physical traits. And there's no production because he's an offensive lineman. So you don't really have anything other than to go on that. His tape was obviously extremely rough and raw. And it just, you know, like compare that to like, I know he hasn't done anything yet, but like Hassanin, the defensive end that we take out of Boise State, incredibly productive, but he doesn't have the physical traits. I think Hassanin being a seventh round pick as opposed to Manu being a third or fourth rounder or wherever we got him has a far greater shot at making an impact on this team and getting in a rotation and at least doing something on special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Also, a huge jump in difficulty coming from University of British Columbia as opposed to Boise State.
Right,
You
where you're at
know,
least playing guys that know how to play
yeah,
football on a regular basis.
exactly. Yeah.
One last thing I want to touch on, Phil, before we are out of time for this episode is something I heard. I mean, you and I are, at the end of the day, Phil, we're normal people and we listen to talk radio just like anybody else. And I like to think that you and I formulate our ideas and our content on our own based on our own unique ideas. But every once in a while, you hear something that catches your attention. I at least want to bring it up. Since you and I last spoke, I was listening to former Detroit Lion player John Jansen on his radio show on 97.1 FM out of Detroit, and he had brought up that he was hearing a little bit of scuttlebutt implying that there is a chance, not saying it's definite or greater than 50-50 or anything like that, but there is a chance that Jahmyr Gibbs may kind of flex that muscle of, hey, I'm seeing how quickly you are to throw money at other guys. You and I mentioned Kirby Joseph, how they were way too soon throwing money his way. They've extended other guys way earlier than they've needed to. Gibbs is heading into year 4 of his rookie contract. The Lions already picked up next year, which is the year 5 team option, so he's already locked in for that. But there's a possibility that he could say, hey, if we don't get something figured out by way of an extension before we really get rolling in training camp here, I may kind of watch how much I really devote to being a full-on active participant in training camp. You think there's anything to that, Phil? You think we have a hold out, or as they call it these days, hold in candidate potentially in Jahmyr Gibbs heading into the meat and potatoes of training camp here? Or you think John Jansen's starting something out of nowhere?
Well, he probably has some connections inside that locker room, being on that station, and you know, I know he's tight with TJ Lang, who works, you know, on the radio side of things, is probably dialed in somewhere in there. Listen, I think there's a very real possibility that a thing like that could happen in 2026. I think where the other Detroit franchises are, with some star players, you've got Dylan Larkin with the Wings, you've got Jalen Duren with the Pistons, and you have, as of now, as we're recording this,
Skubal.
Derek School with the Tigers. Who knows what's going to happen?
Right.
And I don't want to say it's bad advice, but it just seems like everything is so financially motivated instead of trying to go ahead and play for that championship. I don't know if that's necessarily the case here with Gibbs. Again, this could all just be pure speculation. But he also plays in one of the most physically demanding positions in the sport, the one that has the least amount of shelf life,
Mm-hmm.
the one that is the most injury averse, you know, as opposed to maybe like a quarterback or something like that taking a big hit. I don't blame him for trying to go get his money. But I've also seen this work out with probably far less talented running backs. And this is exactly why the NFL has the franchise tag. So
that the Lions, for one reason or another, are as averse to using as just about anybody.
But I could totally see a scenario where he eventually plays this season. He doesn't hold out, and it's going to be a franchise tag situation. And then you just have to figure out what to do, how much tread he has on the tires. Does he still have the same speed that he has shown the last couple of years? And unfortunately, it just has to come to a business decision. Is it going to be giving him the type of contract he wants? Or are you going to be like the New York Giants and give up Saquon for literally nothing?
Well, that's just
Comp
it.
pick,
Right now,
you know.
without Googling, tell me who the last team to win a Super Bowl was that signed the running back that they drafted to that first big contract.
Uh, do not know.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't think such a situation exists.
No.
It just goes to show that the running back position doesn't influence winning as directly as people think. A lot of times when you see these big name running backs go on to win Super Bowls, a lot of times, like Saquon Barkley that you mentioned, the Eagles signed him in free agency. Look at what happened with the Seahawks this past year. They went out and won a Super Bowl with Kenneth Walker, a guy they drafted. They said, hey, K9, thanks for the memories. Thanks for the good runs. We'll let somebody else pay you. And unfortunately, I think the Lions did set a dangerous precedent, though, by on numerous occasions run to that signing table way faster than the majority of teams out there do. It sets that example. It sets that mindset to somebody like Jahmyr Gibbs of, oh, hey, this is what the Lions do. So therefore, my phone's got to ring soon, right? Right. And when it doesn't, then you start to maybe get consciously or subconsciously a little cheesed off that everybody else is getting the Brinks truck backing up to their garage and still nothing for him.
Did Bijan Robinson, he got a new deal, I
I
think,
don't
right?
believe he has. And I think, in a way, that's something that if you're Jahmyr Gibbs, you want to see Bijan sign that deal
Yeah.
first. You never want to be the first one to blink because you know that the guy who doesn't is going to get the bigger deal. That's just
Yeah.
the way it works. So you got to think if you're Gibbs, wait for Bijan to sign first. In that you don't want the Lions to make the first move because you know that between the two, you're going to find a way to get lowballed.
Yeah. It's also tough too because as we've gotten further and further away from the NFC Championship, he is an impact player. I don't think anyone would dispute that, and he is top 3. I think that's almost undebatable at this point at that running back spot. I know he didn't have as productive of a season last year, but him, Bijan, and Saquon really are, I think, the 3, top in the game right now. So I don't know. It's something to keep an eye on. I don't have the answer tonight, Vince. I don't feel like you've got the answer here tonight, but I just,
I'd be able to retire if I did.
yeah, you
Because then
know,
I'd be able to tell you what tomorrow's lottery numbers are.
little Back to the Future Part 2 action with the Sports Almanac.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Well, in any
So,
case, Phil, it's nice to actually have football right in front of us
yeah,
instead of
it's
speculating
back.
months out in the future. We got it right here at our fingertips.
Yeah. One thing about training camp though that I do miss, and maybe it's just I feel like the Lions were the last really good team to have it, but um, I miss Hard Knocks the way that it kind
The
of
way it
used to
used
be,
to be.
where
Yeah.
it was not a team that won the Super Bowl or really made the playoffs, and it seemed like they had more of a chip on their shoulder, and just the way it was produced. So, um, you know, what I would say when we're on the eve of training camp here, if you're waiting for some actual real good football before Wednesday, um, go check out that old season wherever you can. I'm sure it's on YouTube or something like that. If nothing else, from just the quotes from Dan Campbell and remember Jamal Williams with how great he was
As we has a
that
hanging.
season. So
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure. All right, sports fans, that's all the time we got for you on this episode of Kneecaps for Breakfast. Phil and I are excited to be back talking Lions football with you, and we'll be back at it on a more consistent basis like you're used to. Weekly episodes starting up now and moving forward. And once training camp gets rolling this week, Phil and I are going to have a lot more coming out of Allen Park. So join us again next week for more Kneecaps for Breakfast. For Phil Byrne across the way, Vince Progar saying good morning. Go Lions, forward down the field, over and out.